Lane Johnson says this is his last year, but I think the Eagles' trench problem started a year ago. I'll tell you what that means here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You got that right. It is your team every day. I am Tony Wiggins. He is Kevin Ostracker, and we are in the barbershop as we are each and every Tuesday. I got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by KALSHI. For a limited time, download the KALSHI app and use the code Locked On to get $10 when you trade $10. My main man, Ostracker, is going to run it down with me at the end of the show. We're going to talk about the 49ers. Do they get recognition, or is it all about their attrition? In the middle of the show, the Steelers are fixing their fronts with an S, both offense and defensively. We're going to start though talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and then the Detroit Lions and their trench questions. And the questions are because they've been banged up. Philadelphia has been, Kevin, the offensive line version of what the Green Bay Packers have been with quarterbacks. I can't remember when they didn't have one. So I can't remember when the Eagles didn't have a good offensive line. Last year left a little bit to be desired, though, and everybody will point to maybe Landon Dickerson's banged up, Kevin. Maybe it's Lane Johnson. No, it is. For me, I love Howie Roseman, but it is the fact that Geoff Stoutland is no longer there, and they got to figure out a way to replace that legendary coach. That's my opinion.
Sometimes coaches make the difference. Coaches are so underrated. You know, like you can have a great offensive line in terms of talent. You can have all this potential, but if you don't know how to use it, then it doesn't really mean anything. And, you know, I think that when you have a good offensive line and when you're able to use that talent properly, so many things get opened up for you. And I think that we see it across the league. It all starts up front in the trenches. And so, yeah, whether injuries happen or, you know, a guy regresses or whatnot, if you have a good coach, they can patch up some of those holes and, you know, maybe hide a guy a little bit. I mean, that to me is the big factor. So, yeah, it's a big deal. And, you know, for the Eagles' sake, they do need to figure it out.
If you don't believe me, check this out. Geoff Stoutland's last year, they had Mekhi Becton at right guard. He looked like one of the better linemen on that team. Mekhi Becton hadn't done anything with the Jets before that after being taken in the first round. And then he went to the Chargers and didn't do anything out there either. So that tells me it is not just about recognizing talent, which we will all agree that Howie Roseman does. It's also about the coaching that they receive. Listen to this lineage of offensive linemen and the succession that they've had and tell me they haven't been spoiled. Here's Lou DiBiase from Locked On Eagles.
Really big news coming from Philadelphia Eagles training camp today. Lane Johnson just announced to the media that he will retire after the 2026 season. Season 14 will be his last. Not super surprising. He is 36 years old. He's been away from the team for personal, family-related issues over the last week. Normally, when guys get to this point of their career, they start to consider retirement. But at the same time, Lane, when healthy, is still the best right tackle in football. I think when healthy, he is still at the height of his powers. He really hasn't shown any signs of regression. So at the end of this year, this is going to be a really big loss. You are losing a Mount Rushmore Philadelphia Eagles legend, which means the Markel Bell development in year one is even more important now. Luckily for the Eagles, their track record of replacing legends up front on the offensive side of the football and on defense is really good. Replacing Trey Thomas with Jason Peters, replacing Jason Peters with Jordan Mailata, replacing Jason Kelce with, Cam Jurgens, and even somebody like Brandon Brooks with Isaac Seumalo, then Isaac Seumalo with Landon Dickerson, Mekhi Becton. The list goes on and on, even on defense. Replacing Fletcher Cox with Jalen Carter, replacing Darius Slay with Quinyon Mitchell. I trust that Howie Roseman can find the next Lane Johnson, but those don't grow on trees. This is going to be a big loss.
Yeah, they don't grow on trees because Lane Johnson's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And this is what I'm talking about while you can acknowledge that Howie Roseman is very, very, very good at what he does, you cannot dismiss the fact that all of those dudes had the consistency of having Geoff Stoutland as a part of their life as the run game coordinator and as the offensive line coach. I saw some slippage last year in that development aspect, and it coincides with him not being there, and I think it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. And you know, you also need to figure out, like, it's not related to the offensive line, but when you have a duo of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith out there, I mean, it helps, right? You can get the ball out quickly, throw the ball up, you know, not having AJ Brown. And they brought in other players, but, you know, none of them were AJ Brown. So, like, you're going to have to figure it out, because if quick pressure gets to Jalen Hurts, how does he respond, right? If there are multiple defenders in Saquon Barkley's face, what does he do? Because with the Ravens offensive line, for example, like Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, I mean, it's like there's a debate about which duo is better. Is Lamar and Derrick Henry better? Is Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley better? Regardless, Lamar and Derrick Henry couldn't do a lot last season when there were three guys in their face every single play. It'll be the same thing regardless of how talented you are. So in my opinion, you know, is you kind of go from the older group of guys to the newer group of guys, the leaders to the guys who, you know, they've been, I guess, brought up for this moment, right? They've been coached and everything. You can take those lessons, but at the same time, how do you adjust on the fly? Can that new coach do that? And, you know, when you lose a really good coach, it has impact.
Yeah, you guys in Baltimore, y'all, it seems like every year y'all were losing interior offensive linemen, Grubbs and all these, Zeitler. They were all disappearing because you guys were so good. But you at least won something in the process. Detroit didn't. Detroit bit kneecaps for 2 or 3 years. And man, let me tell you something. Murphy's Law has hit them. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, especially in the trenches, especially for a team that wants to be physical. We discussed yesterday, Cade Mays having to miss 8 to 10 weeks. Now that it has been 24 hours, the Lions don't feel any better about it. Here's my main man, Matt Derry, with Locked On Lions.
To be out now, what sounds like 8 to 10 weeks with a fractured wrist, something Jared Goff said today was a total fluke injury, just sucks. Cade Mays was a big signee. He was a big signing. He was the first guy they targeted. He was the top free agent that they went after. And for him to miss any time here with that fractured wrist just sucks. And Goff said today that he's been playing well and he's picking up the system quickly. And gosh, this is just awful.
Yeah, it is awful, Kevin. You don't like to see this for the player, but look, Detroit should have had about enough of the injuries and the trainers and the golf carts and all that. This has gotten to the point where it's not even, it shouldn't be funny anyway, but it's definitely not funny. Detroit is having some real bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I really liked that signing for them. And, you know, I thought that he was one of the more underrated guys on the interior on the market. So, you know, for a team that we had kind of talked about as a team that really needed to get their offensive line in order, I'm like, hey, this is a great move for them. And yeah, you know, injuries, you know, they're terrible. Like, it's just, I wish every team could just be healthy. I mean, you go through, and especially with, like, yeah, the injury luck Detroit has had, and when you have a quarterback, because here's the difference, you know, when you have a quarterback like Lamar or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or like any of these mobile quarterbacks, you know, they can, if your offensive line is bad, they can save you from it because they can escape, get out of the pocket. They make their offensive lines look better. Jared Goff does not move like Lamar or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or any of those mobile quarterbacks. If a guy gets past an offensive lineman, Jared Goff is going right to the ground. Like, that's what it is. And so there's not that extra element for Jared Goff like there is with some of these star mobile quarterbacks. And that's the concerning part to me, is for a team that we knew had to figure out their offensive line situation. I mean, you just hope they can survive until he gets back.
Their best players on offensive linemen, their second best player, well, that's Penei Sewell. Their second best player, in my opinion, is Jahmyr Gibbs. But by virtue of him being a skilled position player, he needs the offensive line. So this may even affect their running game just as much as it affects their quarterbacks. We're going to go to your division, the AFC North. Pittsburgh thinks that they fixed their offensive line. They've had a lot of good competition. We got to go to Cleveland because Todd Monk can let y'all know that he is not Kevin Stefanski, and he responded to some things said about his quarterback battle. We'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On NFL.
Matt Derry here from the Locked On Lions podcast. You know, life insurance is one of those things you don't really think about until you have a reason to. For me, it really hit home when my father passed away over 20 years ago. You start thinking less about yourself and more about the people who depend on you and making sure they're taken care of no matter what. That's why I like Ethos. They make getting life insurance simple. It's 100% online, no doctor visits, no needles, none of that. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in just a few minutes, and even get same-day coverage. And honestly, that's huge because life gets busy. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some plans are as low as just $30 a month. It's just one of those things that gives you peace of mind knowing your family is protected. Take 10 minutes to get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Applications may vary. Rates may vary.
All right, and today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Gametime. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout prices, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are turning to Gametime. The app is built to bring and make buying tickets simple. With upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get to the events you want without the usual hassle. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Kevin Ostracker, we're going to your division, something that you are very, very familiar with, and I'm tempted to ask you about Baltimore Ravens training camp, but I won't do that. I'll tell everyone to make sure they go over to the Locked On Ravens podcast and check out what you have to say about the Baltimore Ravens training camp. But we are going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. I was just hearing from Matt Williamson last Friday that Ahanicher, I can't remember his first name, that kid from Arizona State playing right tackle was lights out in camp. And then I heard Broderick Jones was saying, wait 1 second. And he fought back, and he's starting to get his footing back a little bit. And that bodes really, really well for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who throughout the history was known for good play on the offensive and defensive line. If you don't believe me, go back and look at the Steelers from the 70s and count how many of those guys are Hall of Famers. But now they seem to try to get their physicality back without tackling in training camp. So I don't know how they're going to do that. But Chris Carter is going to tell you how these trenches look.
Big thing I want to see is these lines, because this is the future of the Steelers. This is the future, the foundation of the future Steelers. Yes, they need playmakers. Yes, they need a quarterback that's eventually going to be a great leader for many years to come after Aaron Rodgers retires after this season. Yes, they need playmakers in this offense. But if this offensive line doesn't become a top 10 unit, and not like a fringe top 10 unit, but a secured, one of the best offensive lines in football for the next 5 to 6, 8 to 5, or more like 5 to 10 years, it's going to crumble. Everything about what they're trying to do right now is going to fall apart. And if this defensive line isn't also one of the better defensive fronts in football, both at stuffing the run and setting up the pass rush, then the defense is going to fall apart. And then this whole era is going to feel like an even bigger waste than it has felt than ever before.
Kevin, they have used a lot of resources on their trenches. They are not accustomed to not being able to dominate. So I don't know what the issue is. However, it ain't the fact that they ain't tried to go out and spend money on both of those lines. Do you think they actually get it this year with maybe a change in coaching?
Yes, but my concern, particularly on the D line, and not that they don't have young talent on the D line, but your stars are getting very up there in age, all things considered. Cam Hayward, I mean, it's incredible he's played as long as he has. It's a testament to, his career and how good he's been for so long. TJ Watt is struggled with injuries over the course of his career at points, and he is also not, 25 anymore. So there's some concern there. But you you still have Alex Highsmith. You still have Nick Herbig, who you just signed to a massive extension. Derek Harmon was awesome for them last season. You know, Benton, like all these guys. So they have the youth there as well. But, you know, do you start to like, and not that they haven't already done this a little bit, but do you start to like really manage Cam Hayward snaps or really manage TJ Watt snaps? On the offensive line, I think the Iheanacho pick was, you know, obviously the whole Mekhi Lemon Eagles situation was one thing, but at the same time, like Roderick Jones has had issues injury wise, and, you know, you want to have insurance. And, you know, for a team that is trying to win, and I mean, I assume that's what they're trying to do when they have a 40 however year old quarterback. I mean, you're not building for next year or the 40-year-old quarterback. You know, you don't necessarily want to have your first round pick be a backup and never play. So you're going to have to figure out that. But I think that the talent is there overall. I think they have pieces, but, you know, some of the injury and age concerns do scare me. I think they have the depth to overcome it if it does happen. But at the same time, if it does happen, you're very thin and you only have a certain amount of guys you can go through before it really becomes an issue.
Yeah. So with Mike McCarthy being an offensive coach, and I don't want to play too much into this, and then with Mike Tomlin being a defensive coach, the defensive coordinator is looked at differently, in my opinion. It may not be in every case, but now you're like the head coach of the defense. And that's what Patrick Graham is going to be. McCarthy probably trusts him. Graham is interviewed for head coaching job. That's what he's going to do for the Steelers. And I think by design and by him being in charge, it's going to change Pittsburgh and give you a little bit of a different outlook. Now, coaches matter because before the games even start, I complained last year a lot about Kevin Stefanski, about the way he handled things. And I think he's probably doing the same thing in Atlanta right now, where there's a little bit of okay, what's going on at quarterback? And ain't nothing wrong with him taking a need to know basis. But at some point when things get loud, sometimes you got to stand up and say something. And this is your boy Todd Monken. He just had enough. Listen to the guys from Locked On Browns talk about Todd Monken. This might take a minute, but y'all please pay attention.
What's up, Browns fans? Day 11 in the books. Spencer German.
Lance Reisler.
You know the drill. We got our biggest takeaways from practice. And I'm going to start with something that happened before practice in relation to the quarterbacks, because everybody was wondering what Tom Monken was going to say when asked why he switched up the order on Saturday. And his explanation was essentially somebody got in his ear and said, hey, Shedeur had more reps with the first team, and they wanted to switch it up, and he's the head coach, and he can damn well do as he pleases, and he decided to switch it up. So I guess that's the best we're going to get for now. I'll unpack that more with you on a full-length episode of the pod. But beyond that, at practice today, I actually thought Lance Shedeur with the ones, which was the plan. Todd said he'll be back with the ones today. Deshaun will go tomorrow, and then Shedeur will be on Wednesday, and then they'll make a decision who's starting on Saturday. I thought Shedeur looked really decisive is the biggest thing I would say I noticed today. Getting the football out, making some of those quick throws, something that obviously he's worked on since last year, and I thought that was a good sign in the red zone.
All right, so let me make a prediction. They're going to go with Shedeur. I think they're going to go with Shedeur. I know Deshaun said he loves Cleveland and he loved to hang out and get an extension. And I almost thought I was at a comedy show when I heard him say that. Kevin, what do you think is going on up there in Cleveland, and how do you think it'll play out? Not whether it'll work, but who do you think they'll eventually go with? And you know Todd Monken as well as anybody.
Yeah, I mean, those answers, and you know how Todd went about all that is just so Todd Monken. Like it's so
Definitely so Todd don't be caring about that foolishness.
He's going to tell you how he feels. He does not care. He's going to tell you how he feels. I mean, I agree with you. I think they'll go with Shedeur. I mean, I think it's not only the best option for the team, but you know, at this point, for where Cleveland's at, to me, there's no point in playing Deshaun Watson unless you're trying to trade him midseason like they did with Joe Flacco. And I'm not really sure the value that Deshaun Watson would have around the league, even if he had a great handful of games for Cleveland before the trade deadline. I mean, we all know Cleveland is not aiming for a Super Bowl this year. It's not a surprise to anybody, especially after trading Myles Garrett away. I mean, I think that to me, it'd be the best thing for the team if they just went ahead and saw what they had fully in Shedeur Sanders, because, you know, you want to be able to go out there and make an impact and show the team, hey, this is who I am. And for better or for worse, you know, like you can either have it be, oh, well, you know, you're going to have Shedeur Sanders be the next future of your franchise, and he's the guy, he's shown you enough, or, you know, he doesn't do it, and you say, okay, well, there's a pretty good 2027 quarterback class coming down the pipeline. So I don't know. Feels like to me the answer should be Shedeur Sanders, but I mean, I understand, I guess, the art of competition, for lack of a better word.
No doubt about it. Speaking of competition, a lot in the NFC West. The champion and the team that people thought was going to be the champion, or the team that people think are going to be the champion, both reside at the top of that division. The 49ers been hanging around there for a hot minute, has made a couple of Super Bowl appearances, and still have a bunch of good players. They don't have anybody right now ranked in the top 10 in the NFL, and the guys are wondering why. Let's get to that in our third and final segment here on the Barbershop. All right, today's show sponsored and brought to you by Indeed. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire to happen, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employees with candidates who match specific needs like life skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute that it's going to take me to tell you about this, companies like yours will have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by KALSHI. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at the end of the season? On KALSHI, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Look, if teams are going to qualify for the playoffs this season, right now, I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased, the Jacksonville Jaguars are trending in the right way, meaning a $100 trade would pay out a whole lot more money if they clinch a playoff spot. Now, this is what you got to do, man. On KALSHI, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on KALSHI. Download the KALSHI app and use the code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI, KALSHI. Trade on anything. Got to be 18 and over. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. KALSHI products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see KALSHI.com/regulatory. Let's push it out to the Bay with our guys from over at Locked On 49ers. We did our Locked On NFL Top 100. Other people have done theirs, but ours is the one, man, that I sit and think is the Don Donna. You know what I'm saying? And I'm biased when it comes to that. 49ers are wondering, we got all these guys that's going to wear gold jackets, but why we ain't got nobody up top? Listen.
No 49ers cracking the top 10. You have any problems with that?
No, because I think a lot of the players you would expect to crack the top 10 for the 49ers were hurt last year. Got hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe Fred Warner, hurt. George Kittle, potentially, right? Depending on if he's healthy for a whole year, got hurt. Got hurt multiple times.
Yeah.
Kittle, Chris
Bosa.
McCaffrey was healthy, but Trent Williams, I'm not surprised at all that there were no top 10 49ers. Top 15, I think if healthy, Bosa would have snuck in there, and potentially Fred Warner as well.
Yeah, I can get that, and I can understand it. And Mike Evans, by the way, who wasn't a 49er all this time, he's a Hall of Famer, first ballot. He ain't in there either, and he banged up. I'm telling you, they are the ultimate mash unit of big names in the National Football League. Kay.
Yeah, I mean, like they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of really high-profile names. But yeah, at the same time, it doesn't shock me whatsoever. I mean, you look at for example, the top 10 in itself, you look at who's on that list, and like number 10 is Penei Sewell. Number 9 is Will Anderson. I mean, those are really like, I could see one of those two guys potentially if the 49ers players weren't hurt, or if there were to be somebody replaced to be one of those two guys. But like, those are really the only two spots. And, that's not a lot of spots to sneak into the top 10. So, I mean, look, San Francisco, we know what's going on with San Fran the last couple of years. It's been the injury situation. It's been unfortunate for them. And, this year they've already had some rotten injury luck in certain aspects as well. But yeah, the talent that they have, if they can stay healthy, like they can make some noise. I don't think they're necessarily going to challenge the Rams, but I do think they can make some noise in that division, maybe just making a wild card spot because I think the Rams will win it. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't shocked that 49ers were in the top 10 either.
Yeah, I'm not shocked by that at all, because sometimes it's out with the old and in with the new, especially when the old is always not available. Availability is your best ability. John Franklin Myers is no longer available to be that extra pass rusher in the defense of the Denver Broncos. Jamar King, the defensive line coach, going to find somebody, though. The question is who, and how do they replace Franklin Myers, who signed a big contract with Tennessee? Here's Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos.
One of the biggest questions for the Denver Broncos this offseason has been who is going to replace John Franklin Myers. Well, the Broncos, they went on the NFL draft, and they got a player that they really like. This is Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos. And while Tyler Onyedem, the Broncos' third-round rookie draft pick, has some exciting tools, and I think he's going to play a lot this upcoming season, there is still this question as to who replaces JFM. Last season, he played under 50% of the snaps for the team, and he had 7.5 sacks, but he had constant quarterback pressures, quarterback hits, and knockdowns. That is valuable when you talk about speeding up the clock of the quarterback, which could force him to throw a ball into tight windows where your secondary, led by Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Talanoa Hufanga, and Brandon Jones, Jaquan McMillan, those guys can go and make plays on the football. So that is where you have to factor in, how do you replace that 7.5 sack production? Well, right now, the prime two candidates are Onyedem, who's the rookie, Savion Jones, who redshirted last year essentially for this Broncos team, and maybe a sleeper name to keep an eye on, Jordan Jackson, who could be in the mix to compete for this spot as well, opposite of Zach Allen.
All right, there you go. Denver having to replace, and this is after Nick Bonito or somebody out there said that they're going to try to break the sack record. Well, they're going to have to do it without the dude that provided the most interior pressure in the NFL last year.
Yeah, I love John Franklin Myers. Like I
wanted him in Jacksonville too.
Oh man, but if he'd come to Baltimore, man, let's Vita Vea come on down to Baltimore. John Franklin Myers come on down to, we'll bring everybody down to Baltimore. Maybe Denver should just get Vita Vea a call today. maybe that might be what they got to do. But yeah, it is a huge loss for them. Tennessee is gonna be able to feast a little bit more in that D line with him and Jeff Simmons together. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you really can replace him at this point. There aren't really a ton of options left in free agency. We're not in March anymore. I mean, you could trade for a guy. Is that guy Vita Vea? You just say, hey, we're getting all the talent we possibly can. We'll find a way to play him somehow. Maybe you do something like that. But I just think it does have to be younger guys that step up and other guys taking on bigger responsibilities. That defense is good enough to where I think they can withstand the blow. If a middling defense had lost John Franklin Myers, it'd be a much different conversation. And we might be having a much bigger one about the actual ceiling of that defense. I think Denver will be okay, but maybe their ceiling just isn't as high anymore with John Franklin Myers being gone, but their ceiling still, that Denver defense, is through the roof.
I think that's the second toughest division in the NFL, because I think people are underestimating the Chargers and they're forgetting about the Chiefs, and Denver sitting right there. And then the Raiders are at least competent now, and they're going to be a hard out for a lot of people. We'll have to see how that plays out. This weekend is the first preseason game. You're going to see a lot of names that you don't know, maybe, if you're not one of those diehards, and that's where I have to thank you for making Locked On NFL, the barbershop, your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting as training camps get closer and moves are being made. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure you hit up Kevin Ostracker over on Locked On Ravens to see what's going on over there as well. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, with David Harrison of Locked On Commanders, bringing it to you like we do every day here on the Locked On NFL show, The Barbershop, and we will see you later.